So, why model a Harvey's Foden, I hear you ask? Surely you could do something more personal than that. It's fair to say when we first started this project, we hadn't really got much idea as to livery. Lewes is the historic county town of East Sussex, with suggestions it dates back to the Roman times, and more firm evidence of settlements from the Anglo-Saxon period onwards. Indeed, Lewes Castle was built soon after the 1066 Norman conquest. I've had an interest in Lewes going back to my earliest days, both parents having worked and indeed met there, and my first 3 years of employment after school spent working in the shadow of Lewes Castle. Brian's late wife also worked in the town, so it's a pretty special place for all of us. Anyone who's ever been to Lewes will know that the eastern entrance to the town passes by Harvey's Bridge Wharf Brewery, which has been an integral part of Lewes since the 1700s, pulling water from the River Ouse on whose banks it sits to help give their drinks its unique flavour. The brewery is an iconic building and one that they are proud of, despite the admission that they could operate a more cost-effective business within an industrial unit outside the town's centre. However, the history of the business is very important to their brand. Today, the brewery and business is still owned and run by family descendants of John Harvey, who founded it in 1790 and called themselves Sussex's Brewing Heritage. Harveys also own a large number of pubs across the county, and a pint of Harvey's Sussex Best Bitter is well regarded across the county, indeed the country. Soon after starting the build of our miniature Foden, by chance we came across a copy of Lewes the Postcard Collection by Bob Cairns, and while flicking through the pages spotted a photo of a Foden steam lorry in Harvey's livery. This piqued our interest and resulted in a deal of searching for other photos and evidence. It transpires that Harvey's used Foden lorries for some years. This additional photo is found hanging within the Elmer Arms. However, only seems to be a single black and white photo of the Foden steam lorry depicted within the postcard collection. And reports suggest that most of Harvey's official records and photos were lost in the flood of 2000. At this point, our chassis rails and wheels had already been painted red, and it begged the question of whether we could really do justice to Harvey's, or would we need to repaint everything. To do so would be quite a setback to the project. I attempted to get hold of Harvey's to see if they could provide any further information, but despite multiple attempts were unsuccessful. Although this may in part be due to the impact of the COVID pandemic, which was ongoing at the time. We decided that we would work on the assumption that Harvey's would approve, knowing that the actual name wouldn't appear until late in the build, and potentially we could change the name to something similar, but different if needed. When rebuilding the cab, we did customise some aspects of this to be as close to the design on the photo as possible, and indeed the cab on the photo looks to be slightly higher positioned roof than many other Foden C-types. We contacted a friend, Vaz, and signwriter Harley Harris and explained the project, and he was willing to undertake the signwriting and cab painting. Indeed, his own research discovered that the lettering on the cab actually had a red undertone, which was fortunate and gave the possibility that the red tones we had, by coincidence used, may have some credence. The cab is therefore signwritten as closely as it's possible to the photo. At present, the rear is a standard Foden-style timber base and sided back, while the fully enclosed rear that Harvey's used would not be very practical in miniature form. We do have some ideas to make it closer to the prototype, and of course, a few half-size replica barrels would always add to the effect. Fast forward to September 2023, and despite several attempts, we'd had nothing more by way of a response than a friend getting a verbal, "That sounds interesting." We then happened to find that at the Lawton Autumn show, there was a preserved Ford Thames van, also in Harvey's livery, called Florrie the Lorry. In speaking to its keeper, it transpired that he was the shop manager at Harvey's, and the van had been restored and was owned by the brewery. We've since found there's also a preserved Morris Minor van in green, although we're unsure of its pedigree. Since then, we've received confirmation that Harvey's are happy for us to use the livery, thankfully. We hope to get our lorry down to Lewes so that it can meet its namesake brewery. So while our little lorry may not date back to the 1920s and have the genuine history of some full-size ones, but as none of the Harvey's actual Foden steam lorries appear to have ever made it into preservation, it's about as close as we can get to it. And while having your own name on a lorry is lovely, isn't it better to have something that helps relive a little of the county's history?